A lost princess alien spent a night in a shelter with a young human. What the king alien did was worth listening to. The forest was alive with whispers. The kind of whispers that came when the night grew heavy, when even the stars dared not shine too brightly. Trees loomed like dark pillars, their roots curling over moss and shadow. In that silence, broken only by the distant shriek of night beasts, a figure stumbled through the undergrowth. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faintly, silver-threaded with pale blue, like moonlight given flesh. Her eyes glowed with an inner fire, sharp and alien, yet dulled now by fear. Torn silk clung to her frame, once the robes of royalty, now mud-stained and ragged. She was Princess Kilira of the Dominion. The lost heir. Every branch seemed to reach for her, every shadow threatened to swallow her whole. Her guards had fallen hours ago, ambushed, slaughtered by assassins from rival houses. She had run deeper into the wilderness until her feet bled and her lungs burned. And then, she saw him. A flicker of orange through the trees. A fire. She froze, instinct screaming at her to keep hidden. Yet her body betrayed her, swaying forward, driven by hunger, cold, and exhaustion. There, by the flame, sat a young human. No armor. No weapons, save for a crude knife at his belt. Just a boy, no older than 20 summers, wrapped in a worn cloak. His fire crackled against the dark, and he warmed his hands as if this forest were nothing more than an inconvenience. Kilira stepped into the light, her voice trembling but commanding. Human. Don't kill me. I'll warm your bed. Her words came out harsher than she intended, part plea, part royal command. The boy's head snapped up. His eyes widened. And then, he laughed. Not mockingly. Not cruel. Just a small, nervous laugh, like a man caught between terror and disbelief. You're not from around here, he whispered. His language was rough, but she understood it. The universal tongue carried across their worlds, though his accent bent the word strangely. Kilira straightened, summoning the last fragments of her dignity. I am Princess Kilira of the Dominion. Daughter of the High King. I demand shelter for one night. The boy's brow furrowed. His gaze flicked over her torn gown, her bleeding feet, her trembling hands. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply stared, then shifted aside, gesturing toward the fire. You'll freeze out there. Sit. She hesitated. No subject had ever spoken to her so plainly, so without fear. Yet the fire called to her. Slowly, she lowered herself to the ground. The warmth hit her skin like a living thing. She closed her eyes, shuddering in relief. For the first time since the ambush, she felt safe. But not entirely. She opened one eye to study the boy. His face was ordinary, soft features, tanned from sun, marked by dirt and small scars. Yet there was something in his eyes. Something steady. Something she could not read. You know who I am? She asked softly. He shook his head. Doesn't matter. You're someone who needs shelter. That's enough. His words unsettled her more than hatred would have. For among her people, humans were spoken of as beasts. Tools. Mercenaries. Sometimes pets. Never equals. Yet here, in this forest, this one human looked at her not as a princess, not as prey, but simply as another soul trying to survive the night. And deep within her chest, Kilira felt the first stirrings of something she could not name. The fire snapped, casting shifting shadows across the clearing. For a while, the princess said nothing. She watched the boy move with a kind of rough grace, feeding the flames, adjusting his cloak, handing her a flask of water without ceremony. When her trembling fingers brushed his as she accepted it, he didn't linger. He didn't leer. He just sat back down, staring into the fire as though it held all the answers in the world. She drank slowly, letting the cool water soothe her throat. Then, narrowing her eyes, she tested him. "You know what happens," she said softly, "if a man spends a night alone with a royal daughter." He glanced at her. "I don't." "You die. Either for touching, or for refusing. One way or another." The boy gave the smallest shrug, as though she had told him the weather might turn to rain. "Then I'll die," he said. Her lips parted in disbelief. No hesitation, no bargaining, no trembling for his own life. Just a plain truth spoken by a human who had nothing but a fire and a knife. Kilira shifted closer, lowering her voice. "You could take me. Right here. None would know. My father's enemies already believe I am lost. And, you burn with desire. I can see it." Her gaze lingered on his hands, clenched tight, knuckles pale, trembling not from fear but from something deeper. He didn't deny it. He didn't pretend. Instead, he pulled a small twig from the fire, pressed it against his fingertip, and winced as smoke curled up. The sharp scent of burnt flesh stung the air. Kilira gasped. "What are you doing?" The boy's voice was low, almost pained. "Stopping myself." He dropped the blackened twig and flexed his scorched finger, the skin already blistering. Kilira stared at him. This was no ritual she understood, no custom she had heard of. Pain as a weapon against temptation. Madness. And yet, her chest tightened. "You would harm yourself," she whispered, "just to keep your word." His eyes lifted to hers, and for the first time, she saw the weight behind them. Not the emptiness of a servant. Not the cold calculation of a soldier. But something is stubborn. Something unbreakable. "I told you," he said, "you're safe. Even from me." Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to mock, to tear down the arrogance of this mortal boy, but she could not. Because in that moment, staring into the eyes of a creature her people dismissed as lowborn, she felt something she had never felt before. Trust. The forest howled around them. The fire crackled on. Kilira drew her knees to her chest and whispered into the night, more to herself than to him. Perhaps the stories of your kind are wrong." He didn't answer. He only fed another branch to the fire, the glow painting his face in shades of gold and shadow. And for the first time since her flight began, the princess of the Dominion allowed herself to close her eyes. Not because she was safe. Not because she believed in destiny. But because a human boy had chosen pain over betrayal. The fire was their only witness. Outside the circle of orange light, the forest pressed in with its secrets, unseen creatures shifting through the brush, the wind carrying cries that belonged neither to man nor bird. Kilira lay curled on the earth, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly in the dark. She was not asleep, though her eyes were closed. Royal blood did not allow such carelessness. She was listening. Listening to the human's breath. They came rough, uneven, almost strained. Each one held something deeper than weariness. Hunger. Not for food. Not for drinking. But for her. She could feel it, heavy in the air, pressing against her like an invisible hand. Her kind had mastered the art of reading desire, it was written in 1,000 small signs. The twitch of his jaw. The way his eyes flickered to her when he thought she would not notice. The subtle quiver in his hands. Any other human, she thought, would have taken her already. And yet, he had not. A sharp hiss of breath made her open her eyes. She saw him clutching his hand against his cloak. Then she smelled it. Burnt flesh. Another finger. Her heart jolted. He had pressed it again to the fire. "Why?" she whispered before she could stop herself. He flinched, as though he hadn't known she was awake. His eyes darted to hers, firelight glimmering in them, shame and defiance mixed. "Because," he muttered, "wanting isn't the same as taking." Kilira pushed herself up, staring. Her voice trembled with anger and something else she couldn't name. "You burn yourself, to fight it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up another coal with a stick, held it just long enough for the skin of his next finger to sizzle, and then dropped it, biting back a groan. The smell made her stomach twist. It was barbaric. Insane. And yet she could not look away. "You'll cripple your hands," she cried. His lips tightened, but he said nothing. Only stared into the fire, jaw set, sweat dripping down his brow. Kilira rose to her knees, her voice breaking. "Why not take me?" I offered. I commanded. "Do you think me so repulsive?" Finally, he turned to her. His voice came hoarse, heavy with a truth that felt larger than the night itself. "You're not mine. That's all." The word struck her harder than any blade could. Not mine. Not possession, not conquest, not lust fulfilled. Just, restraint. Her people had never spoken this way. Even among royalty, every bond was built on bargains, power, duty. No one denied themselves when power was within reach. But this human. Kilira's throat tightened, and for the first time since her guards fell, tears touched her eyes. He turned back to the fire. And again, when the heat within him rose too sharply, when desire threatened to overtake his promise, he pressed another finger into the flame. One after another. Until every finger bore the mark of his struggle. By the deep hours of the night, all 10 were blistered, raw, trembling. Kilira sat awake now, openly watching him, her alien heart torn between pity and awe. She wanted to stop him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to touch his hands, to soothe the burns, to understand why he chose pain when pleasure lay inches away. But she said nothing. Because in the silence of that long night, she began to understand something her people never had. Humans were not beasts. They were not tools. They were not lesser. They were dangerous in a way her world had never measured. Dangerous not because of their violence, but because of their loyalty. The boy bore his suffering without complaint. Without reward. For nothing but a promise. And when the gray light of dawn began to seep through the trees, painting the forest in silver mist, Kilira looked at him, truly looked at him, and felt her heart whisper words she never thought she would think. "This one is stronger than kings." The dawn mist clung to the forest like a veil. Dew dripped from the branches, and the air smelled of earth and ash. Kilira stood tall again, her hair matted, her gown torn, but her eyes fierce. The terror of the night had left her, changed. She no longer saw the human as a nameless wanderer. She saw him as her shield. He walked behind her, his hands bound in rough cloth where the burns still wept. He did not complain. He did not ask for thanks. He only carried himself with the same quiet stubbornness that had kept his promise through the night. When they reached the edges of the great road, the sound of hooves thundered against stone. Shining riders emerged from the fog, armored in silver plates, banners trailing behind them. The royal guard. Kilira staggered forward, her voice cracking. "Here. I am here." The lead captain pulled his mount to a halt, eyes widening at the sight of her. Then he dismounted, falling to one knee. "Princess Kilira, the kingdom thought you slain." She shook her head. "Not slain. Found." The captain's gaze shifted to the boy behind her. His brows knotted. "And this human? A prisoner?" Her voice cut sharply, filled with the authority she had been born to wield. "No. My protector." Murmurs rippled through the soldiers. Protectors were sworn knights, battle-forged, noble-born. Not this. Not a human boy dressed in rags. Still, they obeyed. The return to the capital was a blur of trumpets and cries. Crowds poured into the streets, hailing their lost princess. But Kilira noticed the whispers. Eyes lingered not only on her, but on him. The human who had spent the night alone with her. Whispers turned into rumors before they even reached the palace gates. He touched her. He claimed her. He defiled the royal blood. Kilira's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Not yet. The great palace loomed, all white stone and golden spires, glittering under the morning sun. Within its halls, silence struck. Her father awaited. The High King, his crown gleaming like fire, his eyes dark with grief turned to rage and relief. He rose from his throne when he saw her, descending the steps with surprising speed for a man who carried the weight of a kingdom. He caught her in his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "My daughter, my Kilira. You live." Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to stand firm. Because of him. The king's gaze lifted to the human. His expression hardened. The guards shoved the boy forward. He stumbled to his knees before the throne, his burnt hands still wrapped in cloth, his head bowed. At once, courtiers hissed and muttered. Molester. Thief of honor. He defiled the princess to save his own life. The words struck like daggers, but Kilira did not flinch. She turned, her voice slicing through the chamber. Silence. The hall stilled. Her silver-blue eyes blazed as she pointed to the human. He touched me not. All night he guarded me, and when desire rose in him, he burned his own flesh to stop himself. He bled for loyalty. He scarred his hands so that my honor would remain untouched. A stunned quiet fell over the throne room. The courtiers gaped. The guards shifted uneasily. And for the first time, the High King's stern mask cracked with something resembling curiosity. He stepped down, closer, looming over the kneeling boy. His voice thundered. You. Human. What do you say to these charges? Did you lay with my daughter? The boy raised his head, his eyes raw but unflinching. His voice was low, steady, carrying across the chamber like the toll of a bell. No, your majesty. I swore she was safe. And she was. The king studied him for a long, heavy silence. Then, slowly, he said. We shall see. The High King's voice boomed across the chamber. Bring them to the hall of judgment. Gasps rippled through the courtiers. The hall was reserved for traitors, oath-breakers, and the gravest disputes of honor. Never had a mere human stood trial there. The guards dragged the boy forward, though he did not resist. Kilira followed close behind, her chin lifted, her every step filled with defiance. The hall was vast, lit by shafts of light pouring through stained crystal. The air carried the weight of centuries, as though the walls themselves listened. Nobles gathered in tiers, whispering like carrion birds. The human was cast to the center, chains rattling at his wrists. The king took his seat upon the high dais. His gaze cut like steel. Human, he thundered, you stand accused of violating my daughter in her hour of need. Speak truly now, for a lie shall cost you your life. The boy raised his head. His voice was calm, though his hands trembled from pain. I did not touch her. A noble from the left tier rose, robes of crimson swirling. Lord Varax, a rival house, his tongue sharp as venom. He lies. No man, no beast, would resist a night beside the princess. He spent the night with her flesh within reach. To say he restrained himself is an insult to reason. Laughter and murmurs swelled. Heads nodded. The king's gaze never left the boy. And what proof do you offer of your innocence? The boy hesitated. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he unwound the cloth around his hands. Gasps filled the hall. Every finger was blistered, charred, torn with self-inflicted wounds. The smell of burnt flesh still clung to him. He held them up, voice quiet but carrying. When lust tried to master me, I burned it out. 10 times. All night. Until nothing was left but pain. She asked for safety. I gave it. Even from myself. The chamber fell silent. Even the nobles who hated him faltered at the sight. Lord Varrock sneered, though his eyes darted away from the ruined hands. A trick. He could have touched her and burned himself after, to hide his crime. The king's eyes shifted to Kilira. Daughter. Tell us. Was this human's restraint true, or does he mask his sin in scars? The hall held its breath. Every noble leaned forward, eager, hungry. Kilira rose. She stepped down into the circle beside the human, her silver skin gleaming in the light. Her voice rang out, sharp as steel and soft as silk. My father. My king. Hear me. This man, no, this human, is unlike any I have known. When I offered myself, he refused. When temptation grew, he chose pain over dishonor. I saw him suffer in silence. I watched him break his own flesh rather than break his promise. I, Kilira, swear upon my life and blood, he never touched me. The words struck like thunder. The nobles erupted, some in outrage, some in disbelief, a few in awed whispers. Why defend him so fiercely? Why protect a human? But the High King silenced them with a single raised hand. His eyes narrowed, studying his daughter, then the boy. His voice rumbled low, heavy with judgment. Then perhaps, he said slowly, we must test not the truth, but the worth. The High King rose from his throne. His voice rolled through the hall of judgment like thunder over mountains. Enough of whispers. Enough of doubt. A kingdom is not built on rumor, but on truth, and on worth. He descended the dais, each step echoing against the polished stone. His crown caught the light, burning gold against the dark. The boy knelt there, battered, hands ruined, yet his back remained straight. He did not beg. He did not lower his eyes. The king stopped before him. For a long, crushing silence, he studied the human with the gaze of a ruler who had seen empires rise and burn. Finally, he spoke. You had my daughter in your grasp. You had her honor in your hands. And though no chains bound you, you bound yourself. Not with iron, but with loyalty. The boy swallowed, his voice hoarse. I only did what was right. The king's lips curled, half smile, half snarl. And that is what terrifies me. A murmur rippled through the nobles. Kilira's breath caught, unsure of what would follow. The king turned sharply, his voice cutting the air. Lords and ladies of the Dominion. You mock humans as beasts, yet here one stands, who has shown more strength than 100 armored knights. Who denied desire when kings would have surrendered. Who proved, with fire and flesh, that honor can live even in the frailest body. The hall shook with gasps. Lord Varrock rose again, his face red with fury. This is madness. He is a human. To elevate him would shame our bloodline. He is unworthy of your daughter. The king's gaze struck him down like a blade. Unworthy, he growled. You, who send assassins to murder children in forests. You, who prey on weakness and call it cunning. Tell me, Lord Varrock, how many of your noble hands bear scars of restraint? Varrock faltered, words failing him. The king turned back to the boy. Then to his daughter. Then he raised his hand, silencing the hall. My judgment is given. This human will not be executed. He will not be cast aside. He will not be remembered as a servant. He pointed to Kilira, her eyes wide, her breath trembling. He will be remembered as my daughter's groom. A prince of the Dominion. For no man has proven himself more worthy of her than the one who did not take her, though nothing could have stopped him. The hall erupted in chaos, shouts of outrage, cries of disbelief, a few stunned voices daring to cheer. Kilira's heart pounded. She turned to the boy, searching his face. His eyes, though filled with shock, met hers with that same stubborn steadiness. And in that gaze, she saw not fear, but acceptance. Slowly, she stepped to his side. She lifted his ruined hands in her own, ignoring the blistered flesh, and raised them high for all to see. "This is the proof of his honor," she declared. "This is the proof of his love. Not passion, not conquest, but sacrifice." The chamber hushed. Even the nobles who hated him fell silent. The king's voice boomed one final time. "Let it be known across the stars, that humans are not slaves, nor beasts, nor tools. They are a force. A danger. A fire that burns even itself before breaking its word." He lifted his hand, sealing the decree. "And let this human stand as proof, loyalty is the mightiest power of all." The boy bowed his head, not as a servant, but as an equal. Kilira's lips parted, whispering so only he could hear. "You burned your flesh for me. But you lit a fire in my soul. And I will never let it die." And as the court trembled with the weight of the king's decree, a new truth dawned, a truth that would ripple through the dominion for generations. Humans were not weak. Humans were not lesser. Humans were different. And difference was power.